Liftoff and the clock has started.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Deebo and the Donks. Today, we're going to talk about some local sports here. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Twins. We're going to touch a little bit on the Minnesota Wild and other COVID-related sporting, casualties, issues, whatever you want to call them. Difficult times for sports fans, players, owners, concession stand people, workers of each individual franchise. It's tough. It's tough right now, but I think we are getting closer to seeing a little bit of light, maybe in the spring or next summer. I'm not sure when, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Right now, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Twins. Currently, they are standing here at 14 and 7 or 15 and 7 right in there. 15 and 8. I believe they're 15 and 8. All I have to do is look that up, right? Looking pretty good so far. As far as, hitting, we're about getting what I think most of us would have predicted, even the experts. Most of the guys that are hitting are, the Nelson Cruzes, are hitting. Max Kepler seems to be hitting the last few days. He was in a little bit of a slump, but he started strong. I don't think there's a lot of doubts about him as a Twins fan. I think that Polanco has been on fire all year, doing exactly what he did last year. It looks like he's on pace for, granted, now these are 60-game numbers, so forgive me if I say things like, his kind of projecting his numbers, setting up at, like, say, 162-game regular schedule. He's on a 20 home run pace, hitting 300 again. I wouldn't say he's on an MVP pace like he was last year, but he has been solid and clutch, which is important. Rosario is just... Rosie has been on fire. I think he has 4 home runs in the last 7 games, excuse me. He's swinging the bat well. Love watching that guy play baseball. The way he attacks the plate, he's a lot like Kirby Puckett back in the day, if you know who that is. Kirby would swing at just about anything. He was very difficult to walk, I believe. Bert Blyleven used to say on the broadcast way back in the day. He's just not that Bert did Kirby games. What I'm saying is he has talked about that over the years as a broadcaster. Kirby was just very difficult to walk. You had to literally intentionally walk him, and then it was still 50-50, he would say. But with that said, I believe that he's fun to watch play baseball. Obviously, his fielding has been a bit of a problem the last couple of years, but this year he looks solid. The Twins have the best defensive lineup in baseball. I think they've made 3 or 4 errors all season. So in 23 games, that's incredible. That's all-time record type numbers there. They just don't make errors. They're not. I don't know. I don't know if the rest, the few months off with a short little spring training, and they didn't call it spring training, but you know what I mean. I think that helped them. I think that they look fresh. They look solid. For the Twins, it worked so far as batting and fielding goes. I'm pretty happy with the lineup right now. I think most fans probably would have to be, if you told the average fan that they're going to be 15 and 8, 23 games in, I'd say we'd be pretty, okay, sounds great. First place. I think they have about the 4th best record in baseball, right in that range, just a game or 2 out either way. Right on pace. And, they do have some guys struggling, which is natural in baseball. Buxton came out of the gate struggling after he came back from the injury, and he has been on fire. I think he has 5 home runs in about 9 games. He's on, him and Cruz had 2 over the weekend, or excuse me, when I say the weekend, it was the weekend. Hello? Wake up, Dan. So I believe that most of the lineup, if you go through it, Rosario, Polanco, Kepler, to a certain extent Gonzalez, playing about 2 and 3 days right now. Nelson Cruz just came out of a little slump. Buxton is obviously on fire. Arias has been quiet, but he has such great at-bats. The old saying, that he's a professional at the plate. He has professional at-bats. He seems to go between 3 and 7 pitches just about 3 times a night, and that puts so much pressure on the opposing pitchers and the opposing coaches. And what that does is that just sets tones. That's that he's coming up next. It's something you think about as a pitcher early on in the game. You do know that Arias is on deck, and you probably already have a book on him, even though it's only his second year, and you realize, guy batted 330 or whatever last year. You got to give him a little credit, and then he keeps having these quality at bats. He keeps having these professional at bats where he just goes deep in the count, and he puts pressure on you. And so when you're pitching to the guy in front of him, you kind of rush it a little bit. You want to get this guy. You don't want to throw 7 or 8 pitches to this guy because you're probably going to throw 6 to 10 to the next guy. So you don't get the pitch count that you used to in baseball. Back when I was a kid, pitchers would pitch for long periods of time. They would pitch, as long as, 120, 130 pitches was regular. You do that once a week for sure, or once probably every 3-4 starts would probably be a better take on that back in the 1970s, 80s, 90s. And now they have you on pitch counts, and we're probably more than ever with COVID, shortening the season and whatnot. Now they've really got them on pitch counts. I'm seeing 80 pitches and they're out. I'm not seeing a lot of Major League Baseball starting pitchers going more than 5 or 6 innings, unless they're just on fire. They're cruising with 12 pitch innings and they have 73 pitches in the 7th. Then they'll probably keep them in. But some managers aren't even doing that. They're just going by the book. They know they have extra bullpens right now, so that helps a lot. That's kind of how I see that going down the road. I believe that they still have some other guys that need to kind of come around, obviously. We've seen Sano has been I think he's striking out about 3 times a night currently on average. That's frustrating to watch. Jake Cave started out okay, and he's now slumped down to where I think he normally is, even though he's down below, I think, 200 now. Mitch Garver is absolutely lost at the plate right now. Just going to assume it's a slump. I don't think he's a 30 home run guy per se. That was an anomaly last year. That's not him. The juiced ball and all of the things that go with that, I believe, had a lot to do with Garver's numbers last year. I mean, if you put the 2 catchers together last year that we had, they had 50 home runs between the 2 of them. That's don't tell me they have that kind of power, because they don't. There's a juiced ball in baseball. I don't even think that's worth discussing anymore. It's kind of old news. It just is what it is. Home runs put people in the seats, makes it more exciting. Strikeouts are fun, but they're not as fun as a home run. Kids love seeing that, and I think that's where baseball's just kind of let it go that way. They've done it before. It's not the first time. If you talk about the steroid area, that's what I believe a lot of people call, the Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens type era. They called it the steroid era. It was PEDs for sure. There's no doubting that, but a lot of that was a juiced ball. They had a strike in 1995 that shut down the season. They had no playoffs. For you kids that are possibly listening, that sounds kind of normal now with COVID shutting things down, but that was very rare back then. Sometimes the owners and players would lose a season or a part of a season, but they would never miss the playoffs. The playoffs, that's where you make all your money as an owner and as a franchise, so they don't do that. It was very rare, and we lost that as fans, and fans didn't go back. In 1996, 1997, the attendance levels were at all-time lows. No one was going to games. The TV contracts were now taking a hit. It was costing Major League Baseball a fortune. And just to kind of sum that up, they juiced the ball up in 1998, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. I mean, guys like Brady Anderson, you've probably never heard of him, but the guy traditionally hit 9 home runs a year in a 162-game schedule. He hit 51 one of those seasons. I mean, that's insanity. And there are many, 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 many cases like that throughout baseball. Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa were hitting 60, 70 home runs every year. It was crazy back then. You have, I believe 9 of the top 13 all-time home run seasons are during that little 5-year period. You do the math. How is that possible? It's steroids. Come on. That's illogical that it's all PEDs. And PEDs weren't new. They didn't just start in 1998. They had been happening since the late 1960s and early 1970s and became pretty predominant in the 80s. The Jose Cansecos of the world were doing them and admitted it in books and in interviews that they were doing them all the time. So I believe the ball is juiced again, and it's not anything too new. It's just part of baseball now, I guess. I don't know. But I'm pretty excited about the Twins lineup. I think most fans are. Even the experts are kind of, they're in the ranking systems on your ESPNs and, your news sources, they have them, third or fourth best in the league as far as their prognostications for the playoffs and whatnot. Pitching staff has been up and down. We're not getting great starts, but in this new era of baseball, to go 3 1/3 innings, it's not that big a deal for a manager. He doesn't panic. Back in the day, that would ruin your entire weekend if your starter on Friday night would go 3 1/3. Well, now you're going to use your entire bullpen up, and come Sunday, you're going to be throwing mops out there. You're going to be throwing out to your middle reliever to chop up 5 innings, and you're going to probably lose 12-5. So that can set up the thing. Now they plan for this. Now they have the pitchers knowing that they're on pitch counts. They know the relievers are on pitch counts. They know when they're going to use them throughout a series or throughout a week. They know their injury levels, and it's just way, way more analytical now. And personally, I kind of like it, but at the same time, it does take some of that old school out of baseball. The old Jack Morris, give me the ball in the 10th inning kind of theory. Jack Morris had no problem pitching in the 10th inning after pitching 9 innings and throwing 140 pitches. He just was a horse, and there were a lot of pitchers like him back in the day. That was common. Now it's pretty much unheard of. You don't get over 120 pitches unless it's maybe a playoff game, and a very rare occurrence, but they just don't do that because they're worried about the arms and whatnot. So continuing on there, we do have some bats on the bench that I think are struggling, but we'll kind of see how that goes. I do know that you've got to love the pitching staff right now overall in the bullpen. The bullpen is just lights out. They are doing great, and I think that'll continue. Taylor Rogers had a little bit of a hiccup the last week, but yeah, that's nothing to worry about. It wasn't like he was walking 3 guys and giving up a double. He, a bad pitch here and there, and he gave up I believe a 2-run home run to lose a game. That's going to happen in a 60-game schedule. He's gonna do that 2 or 3 times, and that's okay. That's closers aren't perfect. No one's perfect in baseball or any sport or any life. So, kind of basing on the Twins, some of the odd quirks about the season here because of COVID that I think are becoming more of a realism now that we're into the season, 20, we're over a third into the season already. I think if you do the math, we're somewhere in the area, almost 40% of the season's done already. And it's interesting to kind of take what's going on. I believe the Twins, for instance, are playing the Royals and Brewers like 16 times in 22 games or something like that. I mean, so they're just, they have that in baseball, where you play a team 9 times in a month. I understand that, and I'm sure the listeners do too, but this is really, really aggressive. I mean, we're playing the Brewers more than ever because of the locality and the COVID. They don't want a lot of travel if possible, and they want to keep you, local and staying as close to your location as possible for your games. So we're playing Milwaukee more than normal. We're playing Kansas City the normal amount of times. We're just playing them all in the same time and area. And that's what they planned on doing. That was part of the process, is they want you playing the same team a lot. So you're seeing the same contacts, you're staying in the same parks, and they feel like it's a little less likely that you're going to come in contact with COVID and spread it, because their kind of theory is if you're going to 3 different cities in a week and a half, it's more likely that you will see more people, and then you will contact the virus, and it will be spread throughout your team and throughout baseball. And I think that's not a bad plan. Now, we're going to play the Royals, what are we playing them, 14 times? Or I think my math is off there, but you get the point. They're going to play them 14 times in about 2 weeks, and we're done with them. So we play the Royals this weekend, and here we are in mid-August, and we're done with them for the entire season. We do not see them again. So that's how it goes. We've played the Indians already, I think, 7 times. We've only played the Tigers and White Sox, I think, 3. Or we've played the White Sox 6 times already. So they'll be playing them a lot more in the end. They will play I think they finished the season basically with the Tigers, the Tigers, drawing blanks on the division, and the Indians. They have another 6-game set with them coming up, which will kind of probably decide the division, which is going to be exciting. And so the quirkiness of the schedule is the odd thing. It's super different, and it is kind of deciding divisions, because if your division is weak, you're going to be stronger than ever. I saw a stat this morning. The New York Yankees are 16-8, I believe, something like that. And they are 6-0 against the Red Sox. So if you take their 16-9, I believe, if you take their 6 games against the Red Sox out so far, and they play them like another 6 times, they're barely above 500. They're like 9-6. So I mean, that's a bit of an issue there. For my math is terrible there, by the way, but you get what I'm saying. You take out the 6 games against the Red Sox, and the Yankees are just a barely above 500 team right now. So I think they're not struggling, but when you put up 8-12 on the Red Sox pitching lineup right now every night, your stats are just insane. You know, Judge had like 9 home runs in like a week and a half, and then because he played the Red Sox 6 times, you know, he was blasting them nonstop, and that's kind of aggressive. And the pitching staffs over there. I think right now the East is kind of struggling with pitching. It's higher than normal, so it's a bit of an issue. And the Yankees are. This is a 162 game season. My goodness, they would be probably blasting all of the records away again, like they did last year. Only reason they don't have the home run record is because the Twins beat them by 1, which is very nice. Of course, they took that out on us in the playoffs a little bit. We won't bring that up anymore this year. We don't need to talk about that negativity and the way the Yankees own us. You know, we just rent Target Field, they own it. Kind of nonsense. That's kind of all I have on baseball. We do have a couple of injuries. You know, I believe Odorizzi is just getting back into his groove. He had a better outing, had bad pitch over the weekend on Saturday, I believe he pitched, but he looked pretty solid. I think he's kind of looking a little bit more like last year. Maybe coming back to earth a little bit. I don't think he's a 3.5 ERA kind of guy for a season. I think he's more of a 4. But that's okay. When the Twins put up the runs that they do, the run productivity that they do, you don't need shutout pitchers. I wish Barrios would figure it out. He had a pretty good season last year. I was hoping a step forward this year. Right now it looks like maybe a little bit of a step back. He's still a strikeout pitcher. He's still a power pitcher, but he is giving up a lot of home runs and walking more than normal. Compared to last year and even the year before. But hopefully he figures it out. I believe the lineup is good. I believe the pitching staff in the bullpen is fine. It's better than most of the teams in the league, so that's fine with us, right? And then the starting staff with Maheda, you know, he's kind of lights out. I don't know what's going on, you know, with Dobnik. I mean, looks like Cy Young right now. He's just killing the league. ERA's down around 1. He's, I believe, 4-1. He's just doing great. He keeps that up. He'll come back to earth a little bit, but hopefully not. You know, hopefully he continues. And then they do have Homer Bailey coming back here in a couple of weeks. So I believe the staff's going to be okay. We'll be using 7 pitchers, and we'll be doing that reliever starting about once a week, it looks like, where we start a reliever for an inning or 2 and then just use the bullpen the whole game. I think the plan was to do that anyway. But the plan was to do that on an off week. So when they have 1 day off in a week, which is like every other week with this quirky schedule, they would do that. Then they could skip somebody in the rotation, give them a day off, give everyone a day off technically because they all get moved back to 6 day rest instead of 5-day rest. I knew they want the pitchers ready to go for the playoffs. I mean, the Twins can basically start setting up for the playoffs already. You know, there's only, 30-some games left before we're moving into the postseason. Provided there is a postseason. I know we all know about the Miami Marlins outbreak, and St. Louis has played like 7 games because they've been on COVID shutdown with all the cases. And I don't believe that's over. I believe there'll be another team or 2, and we may even need to play more doubleheaders. Sounds like a lot of people are loving the 7-inning doubleheaders. I saw a tweet from a baseball writer who said, why don't we do this every year? Let's shorten the season up a little bit. Not 162 games. You know, the traditionalists need their stats. They want 162 games to match up. But shorten the season a little bit. Pull this thing down into September. Finish it in September, or maybe start it later than April, because a lot of places in the United States have trouble in weather in March and April. So move the season a little bit and do Saturday, double headers. And do 7-inning doubleheaders. So do 7-inning first game, 7-inning second game. You're only playing 14 innings. That's not, it's not that big a deal. Beats up on your pitching staff a little bit. I imagine the managers will have complaints about that, but it sounds like that's a possibility, or at least it's on the docket for talking about in the offseason. I'm sure there'll be all kinds of strange things being talked about in the offseason. So that's kind of all I have on the Twins so far. We'll talk a little bit here. Moving on to the Wild. Not a huge fun subject right now. Looked okay against Vancouver. Vancouver's for real. Vancouver's gonna, they're gonna take St. Louis to 6-7 games, and they're going to give them all kinds of headaches. They're a good hockey team, and they're very young and very talented. They're just, in my opinion, they were too fast for the Wild. The Wild have some fast players. They do have good talent. I think we all like, what's going on with the Wild, with the youth. I would like Coyle back, and then in the trade for Boston, I don't know that I would want Granlund back. I don't know, the give and the takes and the trades and whatnot. I think that, it's tough. It's too early to tell, but I kind of like the youth that we have right now. I kind of like where they're going. I like Greenway. I do like the way he's not fast, but he's a good third line wing, and that's what he is, and that's fine. He's a solid player. I think that he's the kind of guy that's not making much money, and you extend him a little bit and keep him here and see if you can build, around him. The problem is their centers. They don't have any. Koivu's done, obviously, and he was a fourth line center right now anyway. He was just taking some late faceoffs late in the game, but he wasn't the playoff specialist he was 2 or 3 years ago because of age and whatnot. But I do believe they do have some issues there. Eriksson Ek is, I like him, but he's like a fourth line center on most teams. We have him basically set up as a second line center right now, and that's not going to work. That's a bit of an issue. All we really have is Stahl, and Stahl's 30-some years old. He's at the twilight end of his career. They need more centers. So we got to figure out the center position in the offseason. That is absolute paramount. The wings, I think they're in pretty good shape. Fiala, they love Foligno. They love the way he plays hockey. And they're happy with him. They like Kunin. Obviously Parise with the contract. It is what it is. You're not going anywhere there. It's an expensive line because of him. Galechin, I don't even know how to say his name anymore. Galchenyuk, am I saying that right? The Penguin guy that they got over. He's kind of traveled the league just a little bit. He's got a lot of talent. They got him in the trade for Zucker. He does things with the stick that, he looks like an elite player at times. And he did against Vancouver in the playoff series. He looked, are we calling it a playoff series? I think it was a qualifying series. I don't know what they're calling these things. But in that series, he looked talented at times. Now, he looked overwhelmed. He looked out of position. He did not do a good job on the, forcing. The Wild were trying to force Vancouver to dump a little bit. And when they did that, the defensemen drop back, and they drop back fast. The problem is when they don't dump it in, when they do make a move around a guy like a center like that, a slow center like that, you got an issue because now you're going to have 3-on-2 type situations in your zone for a second, and it's going to cause problems. And it did cause problems in games 3 and 4 against Vancouver. They did whatever they want to get into the blue line, to get into the zone, if you will. They didn't have a lot of trouble. They didn't even need to dump and chase. You don't really want to make a team like Vancouver dump and chase anyway. That's a flaw in your coaching system. They're too fast. Our defensemen they're not bad. They're not fast though. When you have Suter healthy, he's never going to burn anybody. As far as getting back to the boards and the corners, he's not going to get there very fast. I think Spurgeon can. I think that he's got the speed. Brodin has the speed. Dumba can have the speed. He doesn't skate well backwards, but weird as a defenseman. But he's still lethal and can be lethal. He didn't do much in the series. It's frustrating. I know we're all waiting for him to have that season, where maybe he has 15 goals, and he looked like he was on pace this year. 15 goals, have a good plus-minus, be a powerhouse on the power play. But I don't know. It hasn't happened yet, and he's already in his mid-20s. But I think if you build all around that, I feel like most Wild fans are okay in our defense. They don't, with Suter healthy, we feel like we're not bad on defense. I think a lot of, Spurgeon solid, Brodin solid, Dumba's pretty solid. The third set, I don't even want to talk about Hunter. Hunt doesn't look bad, but it's early. Soucy seemed to step up. They put him up in the first pairing when Suter went down. He looked okay. He looked a little overwhelmed, and he has not played a ton with Spurgeon. Well, that takes time. As a defenseman, it takes time to play together. Nothing to worry about. Camps will fix that for next season and the season after. But they've got to figure out this age problem. They've got Stahl leaving, Koivu's leaving. I don't know what's going to happen with Stahl. We do obviously have Suter in his twilight of his career. Zuccarello is not a kid. So they've got those older fellas, and then they've got the youth. So they've got a mixture. The problem is the youth isn't really stepping up like they'd like. And when players like Stahl and Parisi don't score, the team struggles and it doesn't do well. But that's not the problem. To be honest with you, to me, the problem is the net. I mean, Dubnyk is taking a huge step back. This is kind of who he has been since way back. I believe he played at Arizona. He didn't do a ton there. Had some, spurts like that great spurt he had when we got him, and he got us to the playoffs a few years ago. But then the Blackhawks pretty much lit us up and found his weaknesses. He struggles on the right side, on the blocker side. High. He can't. I mean, all you have to do. And granted, you got to remember, back in the day, goalies, the butterfly thing, all that stuff, it didn't really exist. They were stand-up goalies, and when they slide, they go over. Now, what they do now is they slide over to their blocker side, and they get down on their knees, and the taller you are as a goalie, the more you close that right shoulder hole, they call it. There's a technical term for it that you experts in hockey would know, but you know what I'm talking about, the 5 plates. So you got the 4 plates in the corner, and then you got the 5 hole. They're hitting that upper left corner, which is always very important to hit because that's, the non-glove side. And you're always practicing that as a hockey player over the years, and now more than ever, because now that goalies are going to be down whenever you're on their right side, taking away all of the angles as possible and hugging the pipe, there's a hole, depending on your height. And Dubnyk's a tall goalie. I think he's 6'5", 6'6", but he still doesn't have a long torso, and he leaves a decent hole. I wouldn't say it's much smaller than a basketball, maybe a little bit smaller, but people are hitting it on him, and the Blackhawks exposed that on in that series. They had 4 or 5 goals in that spot, and we're talking about terrible angle shots going in, and it looks terrible as a fan, but you realize, well, it's a really, really low percentage shot. Well, it used to be. It's not a low percentage anymore. These players, these Kanes of the world, these Crosbys of the world, they practice that shot nonstop. The percentages are coming up on them hitting that shot. And I've seen that in the playoffs this year. Far more blocker side, upper shoulder shots and getting in on really bad angles. And I think that has to be fixed for certain aspects of strategy. That may not be optimum. It used to be, and it worked, and it lowered all the goals against averages for the goalies just because of that technique. Well, maybe it's time to adjust. The players are adjusting. But digressing on, Stahlak, Dubnyk, I don't know. They're not the answer. Stahlak is not much better than Dubnyk, if even better. If they both started 80 games for 2 similar teams, I think they have the same stats. They're just what they are. I think fans like Stahlak more because they're sick of Dubnyk. But if you look at the stats, Stahlak's just a little bit better, but not much. Wins are better this year, but his goals against, his save percentage, and all that. What do you call that? The difficult save percentage, all that stuff. They struggle at all of it across the board, and they're just not very good goalies. We need to find a goalie. Obviously, I think we're all kind of, us hockey fans are kind of, watching that goalie down in Arizona light it up, and I think that bothers us because we let him go. Well, we had 3 goalies at the time. We had to let one go. We couldn't hold on. Actually, we had 4 goalies back then. We couldn't hold on to all 4. You just got to do what you got to do, and you got to hope you pick right. And if you don't, you don't. But maybe they can find a free agent. Maybe they can make a trade. Maybe they can find a player there. If they get a couple of centers, they don't have to be superstars, but if they get a number 1 center in that range, and if they can find another 3rd or 4th line center, I think they're okay there. Maybe pick up a wing, strengthen that up a little bit, and then find a goalie. Now, that's a lot. Cap is an issue for them. They've got Spurgeon making $5 million. You've got Dumba making $6 million. You've got Brodin making $4 million. That's a lot of money on the blue line right there. It's a lot of defensemen making money. And then that's not even to mention, we all know the contracts with Parisi and Suter. You can't spend $20-some million on your blue line, and that's currently what the Wild got stuck doing. That's what they're doing. Now, they have better defense than they've ever had, maybe in the history of the Wild. That's a good thing. Well, why isn't the goalie any better? Are we saying that, what is happening on the analytics there? If we have all this money in defensemen and they're that good, why are we struggling in net? Generally it's a team game. Your goalie isn't the only reason you struggle. It could be a flaw in our defensive coaching system. It could be a flaw with our defensemen. I don't know. I'm a novice hockey fan. I'm a gigantic hockey fan, but I'm a novice in expertise. I just love the game, and I always will. But when it comes to some of those analytics and understanding how it works, I'm just going by my eyes, and I let the experts decide that. And I don't think the experts love our defensive system, and I know they don't love our goalies. So hopefully we can fix that. That is all fixable. So if you're a Wild fan, it's not the end of the road here. Koivu's moving on, and we've got a couple other things that we're going to have to fix. I don't know what they're going to do with Stahl. I believe is in the final year of his contract. It would have been nice if he had a big playoff year. If maybe they get to the second round and he's scoring goals, they can move him next mid-season, something like that if they're struggling. But I don't know. We'll see how that goes. So let's move on to our final part of the show. We're going to talk a little COVID, not politically, and not I'm not going to get into the depth with it. I'm sure all of you are probably pretty sick of talking about COVID at this point anyway. What I'm going to talk about is its relation to local sports and sports in general. My opinion. And remember, all these are all just opinions. It's all I am. I study as much as I can, and I watch as much as I can, and I read as much as I can, but, my brain's only so big. I've got some limitations. Basically, it's kind of struggles. If you are a local Minnesota or Midwest guy, or even if you're national, you're now dealing with COVID on levels you didn't hope to. I thought it would be gone by now. I thought by August or September it'd be long gone. I thought we'd be fine in July. Well, what do I know? This is the worst virus in the history of the world. We didn't know that in March, but we do now, and things have changed. I coach local high school sports. And our football season has been moved to the spring. If we even have it in the spring, they've done some adjustments. If you do have kids in the system and you're wondering what's going on or haven't found out, FYI, they've moved football and volleyball to the spring. And it's not really the spring. It's really, I'm calling it winter 2 season. They have 3 sports seasons in local sports here in Minnesota. They have the fall, the winter, and the spring. Well, they've moved the spring now to what they're calling the summer. So baseball, lacrosse, track and field, those are traditional spring sports in Minnesota, they are moving, instead of being March to June, they are moving to May to July. So even after graduation, things like that, they'll still be playing those sports and finishing those seasons, as long as COVID allows that. And then they're going to slide this little winter 2 season, or spring season, if you will. They're calling it spring season. They're going to slide a season in there where it's going to be football and volleyball. So that way, there are many coaches that cross-coach. They coach more than one sport. And when you get up north and out south and out west in Minnesota, when you get out of the metro area, a lot of those coaches coach more than one sport. They wouldn't be able to coach both sports. They wouldn't be able to do track and field and football. They wouldn't be able to do, soccer and track and field. And they're limited in who their coaches are. In there, when you're talking 80 students in your school and you're combining with other schools just to make teams, that's a bit of a conundrum. And what they're going to try and do to fix that is have this extra season. So, and on top of that, you wouldn't be able to fold, like schools like Fairmont, schools, like Argyle, schools like Pine Island, schools like Pelican Rapids, they probably wouldn't be able to field a football team and a baseball team at the same time. So if they combine all the spring sports, baseball being a spring sport, and then move football to spring sports, or do the same thing with volleyball and softball for ladies, you wouldn't be able to field a team in those small schools. You would have to cancel one of the sports, and that's really what they're dealing with. The Minnesota State High School League had to deal with all these, and I didn't know. Boy, talk about not wanting to be a member of that council or that board. That had to be tough. I was following along as they were doing the voting and what to do, and they had some real tough issues, and I think they did the best they can. What can you do? It's a very rare, weird situation. So locally, that's what's happening in local sports. There's it's going to affect a lot of people. It's going to affect a lot of parents and the kids, of course. And I feel bad for the kids that it's adjusted their life. And we just got done with summer practices, and we're about to start this week with football practices in Minnesota. We've been practicing for 3-4 weeks. You get I think it's 12 practices you can have, and then you can have weightlifting and training and things like that. So you have all these rules that you have in the summer, and you follow them. And we just finished it. We literally finished that season up, or that part of the season up, and then we have like a 2-week break, and then we start the fall season. The actual camps start, if you will, for local high school sports or football. And that's when they had the Minnesota State High School League meeting, and that's when it ended. So the kids have been working their tails off, going to the, running after practices, catching balls after practices, running routes after practices, doing whatever they can to become a better player. And at the same time, they're getting up at 6 in the morning. They're going to the gym. They're going to the weight room at the local schools. And I can only speak for our school, and I'm pretty sure many of the schools locally were doing it. And they're, the kids are working their tails off. It's not going to go unrewarded. Physical fitness is a good thing, but, they're studying playbooks. They're doing everything they're asked to do, and then they're told at the last second, right before the season starts, that they can't play. And it's frustrating, and it's very hard. And we had some kids with tears in their eyes. We had some kids very sad because, that's how kids live. Remember back when you were 17 years old, 16 years old. Tomorrow's the only day. Today is, almost over. That's how they think. They don't think about 4 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. The spring, we're going to play in the spring. That's like 9 years from now. That's how kids think. It's very difficult for them they've lived a shorter lifetime. It's everything's shorter, everything's faster. So that's frustrating, but I just wanted to touch on that and give a little information there if necessary, if anybody needed it. Continuing on with the COVID and how it's relating to sports, obviously we do know currently there are 2 programs going in sports. There is the bubble theory. I think if you're not familiar with the bubble, what the bubble is they take the hockey teams, the National Hockey League, they've taken all of the teams and put them in 2 hub cities. They put them in Edmonton in Canada, and they put them in Toronto in Canada. And they can't leave their hotels. They go directly on a bus to the arena, and they go to the arena. They play their events, they practice, they play their games, and then they go home. When I say home, they go to their hotel room, and they don't leave their hotel room. They eat all their meals at the hotel room. At the hotel. They have banquet centers and stuff. The guys do hang out together. They play sport. They play games. They play cards. They do stuff to pass the time. They've got really nice facilities, but they're cooped up there without their wives, their kids, their families. But it's probably the only way this is doable. I don't think the NHL's had a positive test in something like 16 days, 17 days. So basically, since this all started. For the bubble, for them. They had some people come into the bubble. So what I mean is they were living in their cities practicing, and then they went to Toronto and Edmonton, and then they had some positive cases with staffers or players. But that's gone away. Now that nothing's getting into there, they're not contacting with people. Yeah, they're contacting the rink employees, but they see them every day. And those are also under bubble restrictions. And then, of course, the hotel employees are under bubble-type restrictions, and that's all they see. They don't go to restaurants. They don't go out in public. They don't go to the grocery stores. They don't go anywhere. All that's done for them. And they're just basically living that way, and it's working. The NHL is not having any tests. They do look like they're on pace to finish up and have a Stanley Cup and crown a champion. And the NBA seems to be exactly the same. Now, the only difference between the NBA bubble and the NHL bubble is they're in one city. Or I should say there's a couple differences. They're in Orlando, and they're all staying together in a couple of hotels, and they do the exact same formula, I'm guessing, as the NHL does. The only difference is they have levels. So they're going to do phases, if you will. So the phase 1 was nobody can come into the bubble. It's only staff. It's only broadcasters, and that's it, just like the NHL did. But then they're going to have phase 2 starting, which is they're going to allow close family members, so wives, kids, things like that, into the bubble. That might be a mistake. They're going to have some positive tests, I'm guessing. Might slow down the season, but they've got time. I mean, their union is different than Major League Baseball's and the NFL's unions, where they fight and they bicker and they power. The NBA is a little more progressive. They work together a little bit more. I think they're trying to finish this season up in October or something like that, and they got to move it back to November. Well, they'll move next season up, and they already have. They'll probably find a way to finish this, even if they have some bumps, because we know this is about money. This is about TV money, and the NHL, the NBA. They need the TV money. They have no fans. They're not making any of the money, obviously, for having fans, and that's costing them a lot of money. But pro sports don't work as much with fans as like collegiate sports do or high school sports do. Obviously, there's a huge difference. College is all about, they make a ton of money in TV money, but they make a ton of money with fans. That's why these stadiums have 110,000 seats. The NFL just has 60, 70, 80,000 seat arenas because they don't make nearly as much money as college does because of the rake and how it's dispersed and how it goes. The NFL, they make billions and billions of dollars on TV contracts, as you all know, and that's all they worry about. So backing up here to the COVID, I think the NHL and NBA are doing it right. The NBA is going to have a hiccup probably. That's my prediction. I think most experts would agree with that. We'll see how that goes, but the bubble is working. It's working very, very, probably better than they imagined. They're not having any cases. They're not canceling any games. They're not canceling practices, nothing. It's going very, very well. Hopefully that continues. Now, flip the coin. The non-bubble sport going right now is, I do know that Major League Soccer has a little bubble. I don't follow it. I apologize if you like soccer. It's not that I don't like soccer. I just don't follow it. But the other big sport is Major League Baseball. And Major League Baseball does not have a bubble, and we've seen, I touched on it earlier, the Miami Marlins, St. Louis Cardinals. There's been some other teams, they've had outbreaks with staffers. When I say staffers, I mean, employees, not just baseball players. They've got, all kinds of, equipment trainers and all that type of stuff. And they're dealing with that issue. They're having, outbreaks, and it's causing trouble for them. So hopefully, Major League Baseball's got a little more control of it. I think they're being a little more stern. We just had a couple of Cleveland Indians starters. They're two of their best pitchers. Sneak out of the hotel. I don't know what they did. I did not check into the story. I don't know if they went to I heard they went to a restaurant, had some dinner and a few drinks and partied a little bit, and then went back to the hotel, and they got caught coming back to the hotel by a hotel staff or security, and were reported and are suspended and have to go into a bubble, have to go into a quarantine, and they can't be around the team, and they, that's good. They got to do that, but, we're learning how selfish that is, and the rest of the Indians players I'm reading are not happy. They're very, very upset. They're in the middle of they're one game back of the Minnesota Twins for the pennant, here, and we're over a third of the season, and you've risked, their season and the potential chance of winning a World Series with, something selfish like that. Now, I can kind of understand if a team's 14 games under 500, like say the Seattle Mariners, and they start having issues with that. They started having players sneak out to go see girls or go see whatever they want to see, cause trouble, maybe see a movie, whatever. They're going stir crazy. They want to get the heck out of their hotel room. I can kind of see them doing that because they're 14 games out. They don't even care. Well, now it's selfish. You shouldn't do it. It's dangerous. You don't want to get COVID. We don't know the long-term effects of COVID. We know the short-term effects. We all know. It's very unlikely that if you're under 50 that you're going to pass away. It's very unlikely that you're going to do something. You could carry it and give it to somebody you care about who could pass away, so that's why we're careful. Little common sense. Now, the issue with that is those young guys, those 23-year-old guys, they're not thinking like that. They're not worried. They want to go out and have fun. They want to have a party. They want to go have a few drinks, whatever they like to do. And let's not forget that some of these sports athletes have addictions. They have drug addictions. They have other addictions. They have sex addictions. And this is a facts. So they got they got issues. They're going through withdrawal. And I don't know how they're handling that. I know in the bubble it's probably even harder. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm just going to throw a hockey player out there let's say he's got a coke problem. What's he doing? I mean, how is he getting this fix? How is he doing? Trust me, hockey players have problems just like every other sport. Every sport has drug issues. Every sport in America and in the world has alcohol, drug, and other addiction issues. This is part of the gig, and I don't know how they're handling that, but we're not hearing about it. I'm not hearing any stories, so hopefully it's going very well. So COVID has changed everything. It's been pretty brutal on the sports fans. I mentioned in the last broadcast, I was losing my mind. What the hell is there to do? March is heaven here in Minnesota for sports fans. You have March Madness. I don't follow a lot of NCAA basketball, but I watched the entire tournament. Who doesn't, right? It's fun. It's hilarious. It's a hoot. You fill out your bracket, all that kind of stuff. At the same time, we've got, if you're a hockey fan, and I am a huge hockey fan, obviously, you've got, you're heating up into the playoffs at that point. The stretches, I think there was 10 games left when COVID shut down the NHL. That's the hard stretch to make the playoffs and get your seeding. We had local stuff here. Obviously, we have the Minnesota State High School Tournament, which is, there's 19,000 fans in the AA games. It's insane. It's huge in Minnesota. It gets great ratings on the local channels. And that's another, it's just, there's so much, and then baseball starting, spring training, the thought of summer, it's just a great time for Minnesota sports fans, and it was kind of taken from us by COVID, and that's, we'll move on. But I've been going stir crazy, and I'm sure some of you have too, losing your mind with no sports now with live sports back. It's, it's like boy, you'll never take it for granted. I will never take it for granted again. And you do. You end up doing that because nowadays you have sports on nonstop. You've got ESPN 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 12. You've got FS1, you've got Fox, you've got NBC, you've got NBC Sports Network. It just goes on and on and on. On a given Saturday, there's like 16 stations, cable stations, that will show you a football game of some sort and a different game. It's huge now. So you take it for granted a little bit. At least I do. And touching on, something that touches me near and dear, which is college football, which is, my haven. That's where I live on Saturdays. That's my life. I'm a geek. I love college football. I love the atmosphere of college football. And now that the Gophers are a pretty damn good football team, it's taking it up a step, and now that we have the bad news that, the Gophers are not going to have a fall season. The Big Ten at this point has moved their season to the spring, or they are trying to move it to spring. It's not really going to be the spring again. It's going to be a similar thing to the high school sports where they're actually going to try and move it to January or February. Now, I don't know how you're going to play football at TCF Bank in January. You can. They have a heated field. The Vikings installed the heating system, I believe, when they played there during that season where the Metrodome collapsed a few years ago. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they installed that because they didn't want to play on a frozen tundra. So I think they have the setup there, but I'm assuming the Vikings would be done in January at some point, or could share U.S. Bank and just play at U.S. Bank. So now it works for the Gophers, but I don't know how it's going to work for Northwestern or Indiana or any. Well, Indiana has Indianapolis; they have a dome there, but I know that there's a lot of the schools like Nebraska that don't have a dome access. They'd be playing very, very cold football games. It's doable. They play cold football games all the time, so I don't know how that's going to work, but it may work. And the Pac-10 and Big Ten, like I alluded, have moved their seasons to probably January or February at this point, which is so weird because the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC, the part of the Big Five, they call it, those five conferences that decide the national championship for the most part, they're playing at this point. They've announced their schedules and how they're reworking them, mostly just having conference schedules. They'll play 10-game conference schedules, it looks like, and they'll decide, are they going to decide a champion? Well, I heard the other day, I think it was Thursday, that they are NCAA is canceling all national championships in all sports in the fall. So they're just going to play their seasons and then stop. And then is the Big Ten and Pac-12 going to play their seasons in the spring, or whatever we're calling this, the winter spring? And then we're going to come together in April and have a championship when when the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC haven't played a game in 4 months. I mean, I do not understand this. I assume we're not going to have a national champion, and if we do, maybe I don't know how. If the NCAA is telling, and they run the conferences technically, they run the championships. If they tell you can't have a championship, then you can't, I don't believe. Could be wrong there, but that's what I read. I read that there will be no championships, and that's not just football. Obviously, there's many other sports that go on during the fall in collegiate sports, obviously with soccer and things like that, and volleyball, or excuse me, not volleyball, but maybe volleyball does go in the fall. I forget. I thought it was a winter sport, but no, it's not, because of basketball. Girls basketball plays there, and they'd have to use the same gyms, and it wouldn't work. Okay, so that's it's just odd that they're moving that, and I'm not real sure how they're going to have football seasons in college sports with no championships. To me, that's just that's kind of why you play, right? I mean, not really, but it is in the end. It's why Ohio State. It's why Florida State. It's why Texas. It's why Alabama. It's why Penn State. It's why most of these schools play football, is to try and win a national championship. Some of them, that's the only reason they play, like Alabama, Clemson, They expect a national championship every year, and they'll expect one this year, and I don't believe they're going to be able to have one. Very odd, very strange. And I don't know really what's going to happen, but I feel that I know that I followed the money on this one, and I do that a lot, and I believe the Big Ten and Pac-12 want to move to the spring so they can make money, because as I alluded to you, if they are going to have fans, and they are going to sell out like they normally, they have 110,000 people in Michigan on a Saturday for a game. They have 109,000, I believe, in Ohio State for a game down there in Columbus. They have 108,000 or whatever at Happy Valley there for Penn State. Nebraska holds nearly 90,000. That's a lot of seats, and you're not charging $20 a pop here. The average cost of a Michigan ticket is like $90, and that's nosebleedy. The expensive seats are in the hundreds and even thousands. So you times that by 110,000, the math is pretty simple. That's millions of dollars every Saturday, and they need that money. That money disperses. Not to mention that the concession stands make a lot of money, selling their pops and their food, and some do serve liquor. And that probably does pretty well. And then all of the restaurants around the stadiums, that's a different subject altogether, but they need this. It's very important. So COVID has changed sports forever, and it's certainly changed sports on a national, local, and worldwide level for the near future. I've already read that the NCAA basketball committee has decided they're going to move the season up. So when I say up, they're going to move. I'm not saying I might not be saying that correctly. They're going to move the season. They usually start, I want to say they start in November. They're going to move that back. They want to give COVID more time to run its course. And they're hoping that it becomes more manageable by then. And I'm not even going to get too deeply into how college athletes living in dorms, hanging out with each other, going to gyms, going to the mess hall, I call it, going to eat, the cafeteria. My oldest son is 19. He goes to Minot State up in North Dakota. He's going back to school here next week, and he's going to be moved up there, and he'll be all set in his dorm and whatnot, but he's going to be around other kids. He's going to be in a cafeteria. He's going to be in a library. He's going to be in classes with other kids, and kids are irresponsible. Now, my son really isn't. He's going to be careful, and he discusses it with us on a daily basis, but at the same time, I'm still worried. It's still a reality. And that's a small school. It's a beautiful school, great school, but it's a small school. You talk about a school like Michigan, that's 40,000 students together on campus. I don't know how you manage that. How is there not going to be an outbreak? Hopefully there's not. I've been reading that there are presidents of universities, there are coaches that are telling us, no, that's not what some of the studies are saying. They've studied that actually there could be more safe, and I believe Jim Harbaugh up there at Michigan, the Purdue coach, I forget his name, Brom, used to be a quarterback back at Louisville. They've come forward and said, listen, we can manage the kids a little bit better by having the campuses open, because the kids are here and they're staying here. And we're going to test them. Now, I don't know if they're testing the regular everyday, kids that go to school, the academic kids. But the student athletes, they're going to be testing them on a daily basis, weekly basis, whenever necessary, and they're going to have more care than ever before. They're going to be put in hospitals right away if they need it. They're going to be put in quarantine immediately if they show symptoms and they test positive. So they feel like they can manage it, and they're safer. The 19-year-old kid that you send your son or daughter off to college, that they're going to be in a better place. And I don't know. It sounds reasonable. It makes sense. It passes the eye test for me. But I'm not 100% sure I'm sold on it just yet, because I've learned since March that every day that I think I know something about COVID and how this virus spreads, I don't. I'm learning. There are scientists, there are experts that are studying this, and they are changing their opinion every other day because they learn more. And I'm not necessarily learning like a scientist. I'm not telling you I'm not near that kind of intelligence level, but I am learning that I was wrong a lot in March and April in my talking with friends and family, and trying to figure out what's going to happen. When is this going to end? How does it go? How does it work with our works, our kids, our lives, our schools? Everything is obviously affected on this on a daily basis, and we're learning. And I think we have to keep learning. We have to keep understanding, because there'll probably be another virus like this in a year, 2, 3, 4, 10 years down the road. And the more we learn now, the better chance we have of surviving that then, or maybe not causing so many issues for us because we're ahead of it. Obviously, I think everybody's talk right now is about, finding a vaccine for it. There are rumors that there are vaccines in, Russia and places like that. And I know the Americans, and I believe every scientist in the world, that's all they've been working on is that. And I believe we'll come up with something. Now, will it work? Will we test it properly? What are the side effects? You got to deal with that kind of stuff, We'll see. I'm confident. I feel good. I'm positive about it. I feel like that we'll find a way in the next year or two to make this go away forever, at least this strain of this virus. I've learned a lot about viruses, over the last 4 months, more than I've ever wanted to know. But I think everybody's in the same boat there. You just, you're forced. It's all that's on TV for a while. It's all that's happening. With sports taken away, a lot of us people that was a large part of our life, we're forced to watch CNN and Fox News, which, good God, put some cyanide in my mouth and make me swallow. No way. I do not want to watch CNN ever again. I don't want to watch this stuff ever again. But, it's made me more aware. It's made me probably a more educated voter. It's made me a little more interested in politics, and I cannot stand politics, and I'm guessing a lot of you can't either. If you do, great, good for you. They turn me off. I don't believe there's a lot of corruption going on in politics, and I don't think I'm alone in that opinion. But getting back to sports, I think that the NCAA, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, so on, Major League Soccer, everybody is doing the best they can to give us a product because they need to make money. They need to pay their bills just like us, and they want us to watch, and it's important. I believe, here's my theory on sports. It's important for males and females to have that escape from time to time. You work a hard job. You work 50, 55, 60 hours a week. You come home, you take care of 2 kids, you feed them, you wash their clothes, you clean the house, you do all of these things, you as a wife and a husband, or maybe a single father, or maybe a single mother, which is even harder. At times you just need escapes. Sometimes you escape on Facebook. I wouldn't suggest that. I don't trust Facebook anymore. I believe it's just ridiculously political now, and that's all it's for now. Used to be you'd go on there just to take a look at your friends' kids and their dogs and the whole, this kids you graduated with and you haven't seen in 20 years. Oh, they're married. Cool. Awesome. Oh, they're living, they live in California. Looks like a great life. That's how you talk to them in 30, 40 years, 20 years, 15 years, 10 years. It's a fun way back then. That's what it was created for, to spread. Well, that's what it evolved into. Facebook was actually created, at least I learned in the movie, that Zuckerberg created to do a hot or not kind of thing. So you swipe right or left like you do on Tinders and things like that. And you would guess if you like them or not, or if you thought you were attracted or whatever. That's how it started, and then it evolved into what it is today. So kind of backtracking, I think that sports are very important for escape. They give you a couple hours with your buddies, have a beer, relax, laugh, tell jokes, make fun of each other, and watch a ball game is fun. Gives you a reason to get to meet a friend. It also gives you a reason to escape, your mind. Just let your mind go a little bit. Watch it in your bedroom, watch it in your living room, wherever you watch your game. And not just males, obviously females love sports too, and just kind of escape. 45 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it is. It gives you a little time to kind of get away, and it's fun. It's a release. You yell at the TV a little bit, whatever you like to do. And I feel like that's why sports are so important. They're good for mental health. They're good because they keep you active. What I mean by that is you may want to, participate in those sports. You may play at the Y, play some basketball. You may play in a softball league, beer league, non-league, whatever. You may play volleyball. You may do whatever you do, but it keeps you active. And it's another reason that it's great. And that's why sports are great. That's why they're so important. The mental health part of sports is severely underrated by myself and many other people, because you don't understand it. It doesn't make sense, but it keeps you fresh. It keeps you active. And it's also an escape at times. It's like going to a movie, kind of get away for a couple hours, fantasize, have a moment where your brain isn't just thinking about work and money and kids and bills and, all the stuff that we deal with on a daily basis. Well, most of us. You rich people, I don't know what you do. You sit around counting your money and, going on yachts. I don't know what you do, but the rest of us are just out here basically living for sports at times. There's many other things I think that can keep people happy, but it's a great thing, and I'm glad it's back, and I'm sure a lot of you are too. That is going to do it for this podcast. I'm going to be mixing up the podcast constantly. If you're confused, if you are a listener, and I know there's a few of you out there, both of you, get it? Hey, oh, boom, boom. I'll be talking sports on some of them. I'll be talking poker because I'm deeply related into poker over the last 20 years working in the industry. I will also talk conspiracy theories. I'm a big buff on that silliness. I do Making a Murderer on my deep follower of The Making a Murderer. If you're not familiar with it, it's a Netflix thing. Check it out if you choose to. And other things that come up and go around the world. I will be doing some coaching clinics and whatnot. Also, I'll be doing some videos. Right now it's just audio, as you're hearing. I will be doing some videos. I'm just currently working on the glitches. There's a lot that goes on to a podcast, more than I ever anticipated, but I had a couple of guys I know that got me through what to do, how to do it, and now I'm learning on the run. I'm learning. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of editing. It's just way more than I thought it was going to be, but at the same time, it's fun, and I hope you enjoy it. I look forward to talking to you guys down the road. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.